Years ago, as an undergrad student, I heard Yvette Porter give an artist talk about A Week in the Woods, an art project which took place in her spare bedroom of her Montreal apartment. From that moment, the idea of having a show in one's home or a domestic gallery stayed with me. In 2015, I created a domestic gallery called Seafoam, holding 20 exhibitions, and also learned of so many other residential project spaces. In 2021, I attended the inaugural one-day exhibition of Garden Variety by artist and curator Erin Storus. We sat down for a conversation about our experiences and how domestic galleries differ from more traditional ways of exhibiting art.
Garden Variety is the backyard of the shared house I live in on Markham Street. It's, an old kind of like pretty rundown annex house. Having the garden show be there, I guess it felt like a little bit of this like urban oasis. I remember I was sitting in my office at home trying to think, what am I going to call this project? And I wanted to call it The Garden of Earthly Delights after the Hieronymus Bosch painting for a long time. But then I just thought, that's a bit too on the nose, and I don't know if that's going to be something that maybe really sticks. I was just reading this article. It was like a art criticism article, and in it they just, casually tossed out the phrase, your garden variety, whatever. And I just was like, that's it. I liked the idea of having something that was not in a space that was bound by any sort of architecture. That was the whole point of the show in general. The theme was just this kind of like natural, community-oriented, fun time. It's not supposed to be this really like heavily programmed, bureaucratic event. It was just supposed to be something that was like a run-of-the-mill backyard barbecue for the community type of thing, except it's art instead of hot dogs. I didn't have any experience curating at that time. No one's going to give me a chance to curate a show. Why would they? They don't know me. They're like, oh, look, her CV, it's working at a cafe, like, congratulations. So I had found all of these artists just from Instagram. At this point, knowing that I wanted to do a garden show. I can't pay you. I can't really offer you production support or anything. I can maybe pay for an Uber for you to bring your art supplies over to my house. Yeah. I was like, I can give you free alcohol, but that was basically it. And everyone was just really thrilled to be participating.
When I was thinking about Seafoam, I was really longing for closeness with artworks. I intentionally invited artists to install their work for a month, sometimes 2 months. So the duration was really important in living with the work, but that seems counter to garden variety. You have a one-day blast. And it was often word of mouth. People would tell each other, tell their friends, and then text me and make an appointment, and I'd make tea and give them a tour around my apartment, which is the strangest thing. But I also always hosted a dinner in the artist's honor.
Okay.
That was almost like a house party,
right.
But because I work in the food industry and it was taking place in my apartment, it was really natural and made sense to make some food, and a meal allowed for a duration, like an evening. I definitely think the domestic gallery relies on people engaging. It has its life through people participating. either as an exhibiting artist or as an attendee. It was really important to offer that intimacy back to the artists who are sharing their work. But I also found it really intriguing the viewers who came to observe their discomfort with entering a stranger's home. It was very much in the apartment. I didn't clear the space at all to mimic a gallery because there was nowhere to put anything. Artwork would be installed in the common space, so the kitchen or bathroom, or we had a sunroom that everyone would fall in love with. Installing was one of my favorite parts of the project because it's kind of like a puzzle, where things would fit physically, but also how they would feel in the space. I remember for Derek Coulomb's, he does Xerox, black and white art, and they were all laminated long pieces, and we hung them up really high, almost as a border all through the galleries or through the apartment. And you could sort of feel them hovering above you. Often site-specific is really high demand, and I'm not giving any material costs or exhibition fee. So I always felt like that was an unfair ask.
That's very antithetical to the way museums and galleries are set up. You know, it's the white cube space, it's a rectangular room, and there's no noise. It's this idea of you kind of you check your subjectivity at the door and you enter this space that is devoid of space and time, for lack of a better term. I guess in these environments, it's this element of unknowing, of a lack of control that is consistent with real life.
The other thing, sometimes that's the best part though. I remember Shannon's lamps and seeing them hanging from the trees. Something that would never happen in the gallery is their interaction with nature. And as the dusk became darker, the lamps glow. And that was just so lovely.
It's kind of similar with Sarah's piece, so Sarah Maston, who had dug a hole in the backyard and had, adhered a painted canvas to the inside of this bucket and then filled it full of water. And, during the daytime it was beautiful because the sun would kind of lightly glisten off the water and it would create this sparkling effect. So you could get these interesting points of view of the painting inside the hole. But then obviously once the sun set, you couldn't see it anymore. And so what I did was I lit a candle and I had it floating in the water, and all of a sudden it became a completely different piece of art.
Felt like the artwork, you were watching it become itself.
Yeah, because I don't like to pre-plan things. Because for me, curating is based off of a feeling. It's that day, the day of the show, that I will decide where the art goes. And that's just the way I like to work.
The artists will bring work that we've talked about and have some ideas, but we'll need to try it out and see what it actually looks like when it's there, because there's so many more factors. There's other colors in the space and objects, and
the environment itself is constantly changing. It's not a white cube. It's not a sterile space. And that's the thing about domestic spaces, is they are not sterilized spaces.
Some work has more presence or makes more sense in a living space. I remember Alejandro, one of many works he did is he brought everything that was on the exterior of his fridge and put it on mine. So very few people would know I had to introduce it, but that's something that makes the most sense in a domestic gallery space.
With doing my own work in my backyard, I didn't have to situate anything I was doing within academic theory or within this realm of the art world. I could kind of just do everything based off of, does this feel right or does this not feel right? And that was kind of like, that was it.
Having a domestic space is so much about the actual doing of it,
Yeah.
Not the research, and also not the asking permission.
I mean, curating a show in an institutional setting, like 95% of your job isn't even curating, it's just like bureaucratic bullshit. Curator has a very specifically defined role and the artist has a very specifically defined role, and the two do not coincide with one another. Whereas, you know, the way I like to work with my artists is we have discussions about, you know, placement, about the works that are being made, about, you know, how the artist would like them presented and how I would like them presented. And it feels like this collaborative, reciprocal relationship, as opposed to, you know, me being a curator being like, oh, like, here's my artist and like I'm their therapist and I just like, you know, tell them what to do and then they like do it even if they don't like it because I'm the boss, or, you know, and I don't like that relationship. I don't think it's helpful.
That's what attracted me, and so like through that doing together, that collaboration, a friendship is potentially developed.
Yes, it's real honest community building.
Yeah.
In a way that kind of, I don't even know if it can exist in the institutional setting. Authentic community building? I don't know. I mean, that's always their goal, right? But there always seems to be some sort of divide, something that's getting in the way. And I think that's bureaucracy.
During the pandemic, because it was hosting people in the apartment, sort of became dormant out of necessity for safety. That's when I shifted into research mode and I started watching who else was hosting or facilitating domestic spaces and contacting them and having conversations with other facilitators. And that was really beautiful to find people I aligned with who shared this similar role that's so specific.
Right.
There was Yvette Porter, A Week in the Woods. John Goodwin's Goodwater Gallery is in the East End and has been active since 2001. I had a studio in Double Double Land for a bit. It's in Kensington Market. I never visited Butcher Gallery, but it's run by Lily Houston Hertrich and Brad Tinmuth. The Feminist Art Gallery, run by Allison Mitchell and Deirdre Logue. No Vacancy happened during the pandemic, by David Yu. Michael Davison and Nicole Collins, 26 Gallery. Sandra Booster, Open House. I went to Amy Wong's exhibition Braided in a Relational Way at Suzanne Cart's apartment. Yam Lao, The Way Up and the Way Down are one and the same. In 2015, I was in a show for Garden Avenue curated by Ella Dawn McGuff, titled, "In My Faith There Is Loving and Drinking and Looking at the Sun as Much as You Like."
And I feel like so often in the visual arts we celebrate individual artists. That's a really scary way of being in the world.
Yes.
And so having Seafoam allowed me to be part of something. Similarly, like over the 5 years I hosted Seafoam, I really figured out how to be an artist and found people I connected with and who I aligned with.
It's the underground art scene, and it's, artists having to be so savvy in finding these spaces where we can host events and have these shows, because there's no help for us in terms of, finding affordable spaces, and as the city becomes more and more expensive and is pushing out more and more young people and artists, it becomes so integral to the tapestry of any city to have these art spaces that are other than the well-established institutions.
I think that's the thing with Toronto. The DIY scene has been here and continues to be alive. Whereas like the projects that I'm finding are across, or like who's running them changes and where, but artists continue to find space to make their work and share it with each other in the city, which is really what makes Toronto fun.